Live from downtown Vancouver at the Vancouver Film School campus, it's time for EP Live. Hey, welcome to EPN. My name is Victor Lucas, and we bring you the latest in everything cool. And we know it's been a while. We were in Tokyo, we were in Osaka, we were in Nagoya and Tokoname all last week. I still have a little bit of jet lag, but thankfully I've had a ton of video games and TV shows to get caught up on, so my head is all over the frickin' place right now. It is the busiest time of year, and we're going to dive into some very, very fun conversations about some very hot stuff, particularly Star Wars today. So hopefully you still have a shine on for Star Wars. And speaking of which, we're going to get to our rundown, but I have to dedicate this one to my friends Amy Hennig and Julian Beek, who just announced today that they are going to be working at Skydance Interactive, fusing video games and scripted entertainment in some really spectacular ways. So I'm very excited about that. Amy and Julian, congratulations. I can't wait to find out more about what you guys are working on. This rundown is all yours. All right. Hell has frozen over because Valve is making a new Half-Life game, but it's not Half-Life 3. After more than a decade of waiting, Valve has officially announced an all-new entry in their iconic sci-fi shooter series. It's a VR game called Half-Life Alyx, and as the title suggests, we'll focus on the companion character, Alyx Vance, from Half-Life 2. It's unclear if hero Gordon Freeman will appear, and we also don't know when this game will take place in the Half-Life story. Valve had a hand in making the HTC Vive headset, so they obviously have a vested interest in making VR games that will help sell the device. Expect more details soon. Of course, they've got their own Valve-branded headset as well. It's called the Index, and they are all in on VR, so it only seems fitting for them to invest in software for virtual reality as a system. I am psyched to check this out. It's been way too long since we've all been able to jump into the Half-Life universe. I think right now, though, I mean, it's been so long that they're going to have to do some catching up storytelling to get us sort of back in the headspace of these characters and, potentially re-release the old games with modern technology. I know they've done that a few times in the past, but they're such loved titles that I think they could stand to get a fresh new coat of paint and a new update to go along with this VR release. I think this is huge. I'm going to be talking about Oculus VR hardware and software, and I feel like Oculus and Facebook hasn't really taken their foot off the gas with getting new games out to us, but I think Valve has slowed down considerably, and it's been much easier to sort of dive into the library of the Oculus stuff than it has with Valve, but apparently things are about to change. If this is successful, if this helps to sell VR headsets, then I think that this is only going to, foster more engagement and a lot more development in this space, which is exactly what VR needs. So that's exciting. It'll be interesting to see if they do a PlayStation VR port of that, because I feel like Valve is an inclusive company. They are really sort of like, we want to just get people to think about VR. And presumably it'll work on Oculus systems as well. But very excited to find out more about that. Now, it's official. Our galaxy is getting a break from the Star Wars franchise, at least in theaters. After The Rise of Skywalker hits theaters next month, we won't be seeing new Star Wars movies in cinemas for at least 3 years. Disney has just shuffled around the release dates for many of their upcoming films. One to December, dropping a planned December 2021 Star Wars release date and adding a new one to December 2022. This probably has something to do with the cancellation of the planned Star Wars spin-off trilogy from Game of Thrones producers David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, who recently parted ways with Disney and Lucasfilm. It's unclear what the new Star Wars movie plans are going to be for 22 and beyond. And we still have to find out about Rian Johnson. I mean, it feels like every week it's like he's in, he's out, he's in, he's out. I think he's even gone on record and said, we're still talking. We're still trying to figure this out. I'm going to be talking about The Mandalorian Episode 2 very quickly here, and I've got some thoughts on what Lucasfilm should be doing, and I think that Jon Favreau factors into those thoughts. I also think that Dave Filoni factors into those thoughts, but I'll share some of that conversation when I dive into my thoughts on The Mandalorian Episode 2. I think this is the right move. I think there's enough, expectation and speculation about the rise of Skywalker that Disney and Lucasfilm hopefully have a huge hit on their hands, but hopefully more than that, it is an awesome movie that gets us all to love the send-off of a lot of these characters, because presumably this may be one of the last times that we're going to see characters like Finn and Rey and Poe and Luke Skywalker and General Leia, Carrie Fisher, rest in peace. And there's lots of speculation about some of the, previous cast members that are coming back to try to rally all of our adulation and our nostalgic fervor. I just hope it's a great damn movie. I really do. And I have some major concerns, as I'm sure everybody that's watching this does. But we'll find out very soon. I am definitely enthused to be a Star Wars fan, which I'll be discussing very soon here on the show. Now, Nintendo is doubling down on their controversial subscription service for mobile games. They're bringing an optional monthly subscription plan to Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, similar to the one from their more recent mobile game, Mario Kart Tour. They haven't said exactly how much it will cost or what you'll get, but in Mario Kart, users can pay $5 a month and get access to extra loot boxes, characters, and other in-game items. That service was met with loads of criticism from fans, but it's obviously made enough money for Nintendo to want to use it again. Don't be surprised if a similar subscription service pops up in more mobile games. I think this is kind of insidious. I had those thoughts about Mario Kart Tour. I think this recurring sort of cost for one title is exactly the wrong direction for video game companies to go. It might be sort of short-sighted, and it might bring in a lot of revenue right now, and it might make investors happy right now. But in the long term, when we've got pretty cool services like what Apple Arcade is offering and the Google Play Now service or whatever it's called, it just seems kind of backwards thinking and greedy, and those aren't words that I would necessarily associate with Nintendo. And it might make lots of dough, and people might say, well, that's the only game I want to play, and I'm going to pay them $5 a month, and that's good. I got an offer today from, I'm not even going to name what the company was, but they wanted me to review some coloring book app that has a subscription thing where you can pay $100 a year to color new pages of a coloring book. I just think this stuff is insidious, man. We've gotten into this weird sort of space where people can find ways to get that $5 or $10 out of your pocket every month. And some people might be cool with that, but I feel like in the face of incredible value-add services like Disney Plus and Netflix and Apple Arcade and more that are coming on soon, like HBO Max and stuff, where the value is clear, it's that Marvel subscription service that's out there, the Marvel Comics Unlimited. Those feel like, those are worth your $5 or $10 a month, and you've got an endless supply of new entertainment and engagement. I just think it's crazy to say, I'm going to give Pocket Camp $5 a month. That just seems ridiculous. And we're going to be inundated with all of these different little micro purchases on our credit cards every month, right? All of these streaming services and subscriptions that we're going to have. We're kind of taking our target in our purchasing sort of decisions and power from cable and home telephone and things like that, and pushing them in new directions. And it's going to be a lot more sort of a la carte, but don't get suckered. I think anybody that's watching Electric Playground and all of you guys are probably not going to be spending $5 a month on Mario Kart Tour. Anybody going to be? No. I got a bunch of people shaking their heads no. So Nintendo, I don't want to talk about news like that. So if you could find a way to sidestep that and give people a price for some of your games, that would be great. Or work in partnership with companies like Apple and Google and tie them in. Maybe it's a little bit more per month, and you get a bunch of Nintendo games. That would be cool. But this $5 per game thing, crap. All right, and one game that thankfully won't have any microtransactions is Age of Empires 4. The new RTS game from Microsoft and Vancouver-based developer Relic Entertainment won't have any microtransactions. That's according to Microsoft's Adam Isgreen, who tells PC Games and that microtransactions don't make any sense in the real-time strategy genre, so there won't be any in the game. He does say, however, that there will be more traditional expansions and DLC. Age of Empires 4 is the first big collaboration between Relic and Microsoft since Impossible Creatures was released in 2003. And man, I'm having flashbacks of interviewing Alex Garden and the Relic team about impossible creatures from way back when. Holy crap, that's a name I have not heard in a long time. Looking forward to see what's up here with this new title. Age of Empires was one of my favorite RTS games. Franchises, period. It was a great series, and Relic is the best at RTS, so I'm very, very psyched to see what this game holds for us. Maybe we'll have some of the Relic folks in to EP Live, and we can get a deep dive on that game. I'd love that. But I think this is great. We're going to see a lot more, as we see companies in the mobile space try their hand at, trying to... I guess siphon out. I don't want to say they're being duplicitous or they're fooling people or being upfront about what you get for those subscriptions. It feels insidious. But as we're going to see mobile companies try their hand at locking people into these subscriptions, we're going to see more and more game companies say, nope, it's all included, and this is the game, and you pay that, or you pay the subscription fee to that service, and you get all of the content loaded in, and we're going to monetize based on game time. We are definitely navigating this slippery slope in some interesting ways. This digital economy, this always online economy that we're in. People need to get paid, and companies need to stay afloat, all that. But I think people can be fair about it as well. And this sounds fair to me. And I also think that it's great that companies are beating the drum and saying no microtransactions, just like we're going to see in Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which I'm going to be talking about very soon here as well. All right, you guys, that is our rundown. Thank you so much for watching that. Now let's take a look back at this day and everything cool. Welcome to This Day and Everything Cool for November 18th. On this day in 2001, Nintendo brought their tiniest new game system to the West because the GameCube launched in North America following its release in Japan 2 months earlier. Nintendo engineers had begun designing the system shortly after the launch of their previous console, the N64, and this time around they decided to finally abandon cartridges and embrace the CD revolution. Well, sort of. Rather than use compact discs like other contemporary systems, the GameCube used smaller mini-DVD optical discs, which made it more difficult to pirate games. Unfortunately, mini DVDs also meant less storage space, and the different format meant that it was much harder for third-party developers to bring their games to the system. This created a downward spiral, with many developers flocking toward the much more ubiquitous PlayStation 2, which over time created a noticeable lack of titles for the GameCube, which meant fewer sales, which meant even fewer developers, etc., etc. Nintendo created several big first-party games for the device, but despite their popularity, it just wasn't enough to save the system. It ended its lifespan 5 years later with just 21 million units sold, making it one of the lowest-selling Nintendo platforms in history. Nintendo learned from their mistake and made sure that there would be no shortage of games on their next system, the Wii. We'll have more on that tomorrow. The GameCube. We love that little system, don't we? Bunch of great games on that system. Great to see everybody here on the show. Rick Savage is here, Taz is here, Brian Frober, Marco A., thank you for tuning in, Audrion Leon, I've got C-Jams in there, Sam I Am 111, Hip Hop Dan. It sounds like I'm naming off a band. Right? It's like everybody's in a rock band here. I love it. Okay, we've got something huge to talk about. It's taken over the internet, and everybody is talking about this. Disney Plus, massive successful launch. Problems, of course, because how do you sort of reconcile that 10 million people want to sign up for your thing on day one? Lots of people having trouble with logging on, lots of hacked accounts being sold already on the internet, and some very, very big releases launched with this service. And of course, the chief one, the one that's on the main page, at least for me, I don't know if algorithmically it serves up different front pages for different people, but The Mandalorian is front and center. I reviewed the first episode. I gave it a 10 out of 10. I have since seen episode 2 3 times, and I freaking adore this show. And I think it may be one of the smartest television shows I have ever seen in my life. First of all, let's talk about the running time on this series, which is hovering just over 30 minutes long, and that feels like, man, I want my money's worth. I want a longer show. I want a meatier, chunky show. How do you tell a story in that amount of time? Well, if you don't have characters that have a lot of dialogue, guess what? You can do a lot of your storytelling through action and through, cutting the chaff and just getting right from cool beat to cool beat to cool beat. And it's incredibly adept at navigating from a moment that's going to resonate to another moment that's going to resonate. There's no wasted space. And I'm not suggesting that we don't need quieter shows or moments of introspection or shows that give us some deeper character study. This isn't Breaking Bad. But what it does do is that it taps into nostalgia, clearly, but it also taps into a nostalgia that we wanted, you know? And it's what's interesting about this series is that even though the show length and the episodic length can be short, you can watch reviews of each of these episodes that are longer than the actual running time of the show, because there's a lot of information in every episode, and a lot teased, and a lot for us to sort of grapple onto, not to use the grappling hook pun there. But it is a great sort of realization of the dream of Boba Fett. And I mentioned that in the first episode. But how clever is it that all of the people behind the scenes sidestepped the mire of the Jango Fett, Boba Fett kind of crossover and all of the lineage there and the expectation there. They fleshed out a species that was indelible from the moment that we first saw that Boba Fett helmet. Right away, the lore was captivating. You know, we were creating it in our minds and in our imagination. So what they've done is they've been able to anchor the show in some really cool mythology just by kind of a natural following of the course of events that would happen for a species that has a religion based on weaponry, as the Mandalorian says in this second episode. Of course, the Baby Yoda is readily available on the internet now. The GIFs are huge. The memes are huge. That was the big reveal. That's why Disney Plus in the packet of pre-release shows that they were sending out to reviewers, The Mandalorian Episode 1 was not included in those. They didn't want any spoilers out there because it's a pretty big reveal. And of course, in Episode 2, we start to see that this Baby Yoda, or this baby from Yoda's species, has some really incredible force powers and force abilities. And that dichotomy, that juxtaposition of character between this little beatific, peace-loving, little tiny creature and this gruff, ready to kill anything bounty hunter, it just, those two together is just an incredible image, And I love the moments where we do get the long shots and we see the two characters sort of walking through the rocky desert and, we get the sunset and everything. It's so evocative and it's so obviously paying homage to a million Westerns, but in such a beautiful way, And same with the anthemic, bombastic music that plays throughout this thing, which at first was a little off-putting. It's like, this doesn't sound or feel exactly like the Star Wars that I know. But then you start to recognize that what they did is they drilled down on the broken world of Star Wars, and they have lots and lots of busted machinery. And in the second episode, we get to spend a little bit more time with the Jawas that were teased in the very first episode. We get a little glimpse of the Jawas in the first episode, but in this one, we actually get the Jawas and the Sandcrawler, and we get to see that. And I had never really put this together before, but the Sandcrawlers to scale for the Jawas, it's massive and huge in the original Star Wars movie. But when you actually put a human that's 6 feet tall inside of the Jawa vehicle, he's cramped for space, and climbing up it and everything. It was almost like he was climbing a giant Jawa toy in a way. And it was just such a fun piece of cinema, to watch that. And also the tip of the hat or the tip of the fedora to Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade, where he rolls off of the wheel. Just incredible stuff like that. So it's brilliant from an aesthetic kind of sensibility. It's brilliant from a nostalgic kind of sensibility. But it's also incredibly savvy with its brevity and with these, I think because it's engineered to be short, these characters are massive and they resonate and they're performed by unbelievably cool actors. The fact that Nick Nolte is already created a catchphrase that everybody's using. I have spoken, and I don't even know what his character's name is, but he's an unforgettable character. He's fantastic in the show, and I love the action sequences. I love that even though we've got a guy in tons of armor and he, Pedro Pascal never takes his helmet off, he's still incredibly agile and mobile, and he's got a natural acrobatic ability to get himself out of any kind of situation, including a fight with a couple of other Bosk-like bounty hunters in this episode. Incredible stuff. I don't know if because the surprise isn't there in the second episode. Now we're kind of just massaging the story and trying to unravel the mystery. And what we get out of the second episode is that this Baby Yoda is a prize worth pursuing. And, the Mandalorian is going to have to deal with a lot of people coming after him and after this little pint-sized buddy that he's got. It's wonderful, this second episode, but I don't know if it is as incredibly shocking because as the first episode is, because that sort of came out of nowhere. And I guess that's also another brilliant thing about this show is that we knew it was coming. We got little flashes and little teases, but so much of it was kept under wraps, and there's still so much mystery, and there's so much to kind of unfold. And even though these episodes are short, we hang with these moments, and they have weight. And there's a lot to kind of wait for and a lot to anticipate. This is honestly my favorite show of 2019. I can't believe how much I'm just obsessing over The Mandalorian. I can't wait for the third episode. I'll have some thoughts on that soon. But as it stands, episode 2 gets a 9.5 out of 10 from me. All right, you guys, we have a little bit more Star Wars talk for you. I spent the weekend encased in Star Wars with Jedi Fallen Order. Here's my review.
I see you, Jedi. I'm on you.
Need an assist.
You're quick. You won't get through. You'll have to try harder. You aren't quick enough.
BD, stim.
You can't keep that up. Just wing me.
Yep, it's a pretty damn good time to be a Star Wars fan right now. The Mandalorian has blown my mind on Disney Plus, and I came home from my trip to Japan to be able to play through Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order from Respawn and Electronic Arts, and it has also blown me away.
Yes! Kill him! You get the hang of it quick.
This is a game that was a really tricky one for Respawn to demo at E3. And remember how sort of vague they were with the announcement at EA Play, I think in 2018. They just sort of said the title and we didn't see anything. And then they showed it a little bit at E3, but it was a hard one to kind of like get you hyped for, because this is a granular game. This is a game where you have to revel in the details and dig in and understand the mapping that your little robot buddy BD1 will give you, so you can kind of figure out your bearings within the constraints of the entertainment, which is very much like an intelligent hybrid of Metroid and the Souls type games and an Uncharted type experience and a God of War. Like, it takes from some of the best games that we've ever played and, much like Arkham Asylum did a number of years ago, fuses them into something new and incredibly accessible and incredibly well made. This is a very professional production. The voice acting, led by Cameron Monaghan, who played the Velasca twins on Gotham. He is Cal Kestis, this new Jedi in training.
Everything that moves here is trying to kill me.
I love this sort of crisscross between the after effects of Order 66 and sort of taking us into the new rebellion, expertly kind of interwoven there by the use of a younger Saw Gerrera, which I think is a fantastic character. I loved him in Rogue One, so it was great to see Forrest Whitaker and that character in this game again as well.
Hey! Who are you?
There's a lot of flashback sequences, playable flashback sequences, which are done incredibly well at the same kind of quality level that we get throughout the entirety of the game. We go back in time and we understand the nuance to Cal and some of what made him the Jedi that he is becoming in this game. Because you start off not really understanding all of your powers and not understanding everything that you're capable of, which makes for great game design because you're unraveling and unlocking all of these new traits and skills as you go in a very intelligently designed way. And it feels fair, and it feels fun, and it feels compelling, and you sit and you watch every cutscene and you hang on every word, and all of it matters, which is really incredible. Great voice cast all the way through here, and lots of great characters that we meet, like the two shipmates that are on the Mantis with Cal. We've got Sear and we've got Grease, and both of those actors are terrific, and they're great foils for Cal. There's lots of excellent repartee between them.
I would be very careful, Cal.
And we also get fantastic villains like the Second Sister and all of the evil creations that are on Dathomir, which is this kind of undead world that we get to visit. It's very creepy and very infused with demonic imagery. This is a game about exploration as much as it is about combat. It's a great balance between finding your way through this tricky environment where at first the shortcuts aren't immediately obvious and you may have to kind of back route it back to a door that opens up so that you can fast track it from one objective to another. Otherwise, you have to kind of navigate through this world but also battle enemies that will become increasingly more difficult. Of course, you're going to be fighting stormtroopers of every variant, and then you're going to be fighting these darker troopers as well with more plasma-infused weaponry. And you'll go up against these K2SO-like security droids with giant wingspans, these giant sort of NBA basketball player reaches that they can just sort of grapple around you and pick you up and throw you down. They're very intimidating. You're going to be battling AT-STs and all kinds of other creatures and things that will legitimately spook you.
Now the fear creeps in. I like that.
Some unbelievably cool power-ups scattered throughout the entirety of this incredibly ornate game. There's lots of great little nooks and crannies and hidden treasures for you to find. Some of them are a little mundane, like being able to paint your ship a different color, although I did appreciate being able to paint my ship like Slave 1. I thought that was pretty cool. You can also augment your lightsaber with lots of different customization options. You can change the switch, you can change the handle and the emitter, and it's super cool. So you find all of those little pieces in little treasure boxes that are scattered and hidden everywhere. Eventually learn how to swim and then swim underwater, so there's lots of beautiful plant life and undersea life as well, which is great. You also gain incredible abilities like the ability to scale up different walls and maybe a little bit later at a faster clip. I really loved exploring the planet Zepho, which had these incredible tombs. It was awesome, man. It felt almost like I was playing like a Jedi Tomb Raider game or a Jedi Uncharted game. There's lots of climbing up on walls and vines and things and swinging to ropes and then landing on a ledge properly or climbing underneath an obstruction that you can swing up on top of and then teeter and balance. Incredibly acrobatic and athletic and super fun to play, but it also maintains an authenticity and a real connection to what we know of Star Wars, augmenting the universe, giving us a chance to explore worlds that we haven't really been able to do in the movies and the television shows. You can, of course, learn to double jump and force push and force pull, and you learn all kinds of incredible combat attacks with your lightsaber. There are some production stumbles along the way, some, weird clipping that might happen. I played this game on PC, and I also checked it out on the Xbox One X, and on the PC, it ran beautifully, but I had to update the hell out of everything. My OS, my NVIDIA GeForce card, I had to update the game. It just felt like I had to do a lot of stuff for it to run, but then it did run very, very well, and I streamed a whole bunch of it, and I had some of you guys watch some of it, which was great. But I did notice, even after it all had been updated and I was running everything very well for long stretches of time, every once in a while I would get some crazy slowdown or some weird stutter. I'm sure through patching and optimization it's going to get better, and probably that's the case across all of the platforms, although I haven't been able to play through every version of the game, of course. But I did notice there was some messiness in there. Also some messiness in some of the QuickTime events as well. Some of them, it felt a little bit kludged together. It felt like I was doing these crazy jump cuts in the middle of these QuickTime events to sort of progress the story and get you into the action beats, but it felt a little less polished than the majority of the game. Also, so there is some pop in on some of the textures and stuff like that. Like the Wookiees that you'll meet will suddenly get a little bit more detail on them. You know, I'm quibbling because for the majority of this game, you are going to marvel at the environmental effects. Even Dathomir, which is just caked in blood red hues and it's grimy and dirty and it's slippery muck, it looks great.
Try harder.
I was just really, really, really entertained. This felt like great Star Wars escapism. It does make me want the canceled Amy Hennig game very much. I also would love to see that Star Wars 1313 game that got canceled from LucasArts. I think this is fantastic that we got a single-player game here that isn't overloaded with all kinds of microtransactions. This is just a great piece of story-focused escapism in the Star Wars universe. And you know, I know that there's a lot of hate that's directed towards EA and a lot of its recent kind of decisions with regards to the way they've been paying for games and getting games out to us. This is a fantastic step in the right direction, and if you are a Star Wars fan, I definitely encourage you to get this game and to send EA a message and to kind of send the industry a message that we want more of this type of design and this type of gameplay. This was phenomenal, and honestly, Respawn looks like one of the smartest acquisitions that EA has made. I'm going to give Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order a 9 out of 10. Something that I totally recognized when I was playing Jedi Fallen Order is that I think the best Star Wars stories in the next 10 years are going to be told through video games. We're going to get incredible cut sequences, incredible dialogue, incredible performances, and then we're going to be able to play those games. As we enter into this next generation, the realization of Star Wars as an opportunity to play is going to become reality, and I'm incredibly excited about that. And what's clear when you play Jedi Fallen Order, and to some degree Force Unleashed as well, is that the pedigree, the performance pedigree, and the written pedigree and the musical pedigree, it's all ripped right from the movie universe. These creators in that space want to make video games. And they're going to, and the horsepower is going to increase, and the loading times and the cuts between gameplay and narrative is all going to be so seamless and so cool. So I'm incredibly excited about that. But now let's shift over to one of my other favorite topics, superheroes. I've been obsessed with Watchmen on HBO, and we're up to episode 5. I wasn't able to catch up on episode 4 while we were traveling, but I've watched both episodes today, and I'm still trying to process them. Both I thought were really, really solid episodes. 4 was, I think, more exciting for me because I think Watchmen really hums when there are a lot of divergent stories and a lot of things going on at the same time. It gets a little frustrating because you're trying to reconcile all of the connections to the lore that you may remember or recall, and I still haven't had time to go back and read the comics again to kind of refresh my memory on everything. But more and more little bits and pieces are connecting the dots from events that happened 30 years ago, which is represented in Alan Moore's comic, and what's happening now 30 years later. In episode 4, we're introduced to a new character, a new superheroine, I guess. I think mostly through her wealth. Her name is Lady True, and she is creating some incredible clocks, some incredible wonder in the middle of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And starts off as this fascinating opening where she walks in on a couple that were unable to have a child years ago and says, I want to buy your land, and I'm going to buy your land by giving you this baby, which we use through the baby making service that we have in Tulsa that I own. I've created this baby, and I'm going to give you $5 million. I want your house and your land. And they sign right on the dotted line. And she's just ruthless. She actually has an hourglass and says you've got 3 minutes to make a decision. And they basically sign their lives away, but take the baby. And that couple goes on to have a good life. That's a whole other spin-off show, I think, from HBO. But she's fascinating right out of the get-go. And there's definitely some connection with Angela Agar. That's the sort of the main heroine that we've got to know on the show, who also grew up in Vietnam. So we've got a nice sort of combination or a nice connection between these two, which was really cool. But I liked that introduction, and I liked that there was a little bit more sort of sleuthing going on by the main FBI agent's character, who's trying to understand exactly what's going on and who knows what, and she's trying to basically turn some of the cops against each other in episode 4. I thought that was a lot of fun, and there's a lot of threads that are introduced in episode 4, and at the end of it, I was like, well, that was very entertaining, but I'm starting to get a little bit frustrated with all of the different sort of paths that this show can go. And, Damon Lindelof, who's the showrunner on here, has a history of laying down tracks and then not quite fulfilling all of the things that you want out of the show. That's why I was kind of happy to see that episode 5 shrunk the narrative and focused a lot more on Looking Glass. This is Tim Blake Nelson's character, and we get to see his backstory, his basically his origin story. He survived the giant squid attack that happened in the 80s, 30 years prior to the events of the show, and they actually showed it on screen, and it was a pretty cool effect, and the devastation that rippled out. He wasn't in Manhattan at the time; he was on the outskirts, but he got to see it affect a huge chunk of the population. And so we get an understanding of why this guy wears his Looking Glass mask, which reflects everything around him. He also wears almost a literal tinfoil hat because he's basically a conspiracy theorist. He's been completely effed up by all the stuff that happened by the squid coming out of the other dimension and landing on Earth and killing all those people, as one would be, I think. And so he questions everything. He's very fearful. He's got an incredibly ornate alarm system in his house. And we get to see Tim Blake Nelson kind of go full on, he's a bit nutty. He's filled with anxiousness, and he's definitely very suspicious of everybody. Some great performance work there. And he meets some... he has basically a focus support group that he runs, and he tries to help other people that have been affected by the events of the squid falling on Manhattan. And he meets this interesting lady, and they strike up a conversation, and that leads to some, I'm not going to spoil it, but that leads to some interesting developments where we get to find out a little bit more about who Looking Glass is and how he factors into the greater scheme of things. We start to see some betrayals, and we also get a real understanding of who Veidt is, Jeremy Irons' character, who is been desperately trying to escape this beautiful prison that he has put himself in. And at the beginning of the show, we actually see him creating new clones. And it's just a horrific image where he's farming the clones in this lake, and he pulls out babies out of the water, and he throws some back because he's not happy with them. It's like, oh, it was so creepy. And then he creates full-grown adult clones out of these little embryos, these little babies that he has. And some surreal stuff there. And so suffice to say, by the end of episode 5, not only are we starting to laser focus on what the plot of this season is, but we're getting some real understanding and some real connection to stuff that happened in Alan Moore's comic, interwoven through Lindelof's new storytelling, which may be a little much for hardcore fans to take because he has really sort of fused himself into the weave of Watchmen. And I know how much it means to a lot of fans out there, and people might not be crazy about some of these choices, but I find it fascinating, and I also find it kind of fitting because in the comic series, it was it created this question about what would real-life superheroes be like in our world that we know and exist in. And this kind of takes it to another degree because now we've obviously had 20 years of comic book movies and superheroes on screens in every sort of format out there. And it's almost like a funhouse mirror looking back at itself a little bit, you know? And I thought that was, I've been really digging it. I think it's an interesting choice, and I think that it was a fascinating and bold idea for HBO and for Lindelof and for the creators of the show to even go back to this work and and try to embellish it. And so far, I've really been entertained. This is another one of these shows where I don't know where everything is going, and it's a nice surprise, and I want to check in with these characters every week, even if the tension is uncomfortable. And, I just think it's really cool. It's a really cool and a very, very smartly crafted show. So I'm in. I'd give episode 4 an 8 out of 10, and I would give episode 5 an 8.5 out of 10. Not my favorite episode so far, but I like this show a lot, and I can't wait for episode 6. I'll have some thoughts on that next week. All right, you guys, we're going to stay with superheroes for a little bit, but we're going back in time. Here's another 16-bit superhero. I'm continuing my 16-bit superhero series with a look at 1994's The Incredible Hulk on the Super Nintendo. There was a Genesis version of this game as well, but I got the Super Nintendo game. Picked up the cartridge for $30, which is quite a bit of money for an old Super Nintendo cartridge, but I wanted to play. This is my new addiction. For those that don't know, I got so hooked on Spider-Man from Insomniac on the PlayStation 4 last year, and I kind of realized that there were lots of superhero games I never played, especially for the Super Nintendo and the Genesis. I picked up the Analog Mega SG and the Analog Super NT, and I went, I love superhero video games. Let's fill in my library and pick up some of these old carts and see how they fare. Not by any kind of appreciation for where they were back in the day or how I felt about these games back then, but how they play today and how I feel about them today. I'd never played The Incredible Hulk, or at least maybe I did, but not for that long. Didn't have the game before, picked it up, got lost in this game, and man, it's wacky. It is a wacky game, crazy, jazzy, funky music, which doesn't really fit with The Incredible Hulk. He's got this crazy walk animation where he's just boom, 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 bam! Punches feel like they're powerful. You bash on the bad guys for a bit, but it takes them a little while to bust apart. You're starting with androids, and then you've got some alien creatures and things like that in this game. It does feel weird that the Hulk takes damage, but I like the fact that as the Hulk takes damage, he turns back into Bruce Banner, and he's like, whoa, and then he's completely useless as Bruce Banner. The only thing you can do as Bruce Banner is kind of sneak into little tunnels like a rat and then find a gun that runs out of bullets instantly. It feels like I blew up a box and I thought I still had the gun. I got out of the tunnel, jumped up to shoot a bad guy, no bullets. Bullets gone, no gun, dead, which is weird. Like, you can kill the Hulk. Not only can you fall to your doom, or you fall on spikes like Mega Man, and then the Hulk dies? That's weird. The bad guys can beat up the Hulk, which is crazy, but I guess they gotta make a video game, right? What you do is you scroll from level to level, and it's not just a brawler, it's not just like an old Final Fight clone. There are a lot of superhero games that are just brawlers that kind of take the mode of Final Fight, slap in superheroes. This is thankfully not like that. There is some verticality, there is some scaling, there are different areas that require you to get on elevators, and there are mini boss fights with the Abomination. Basically, you're trying to get from the beginning of one level to the end of it and then access a whole new level. You've got like city construction zone type things. You've got like laboratory type deals. You've got this weird red alien landscape, which feels a little evocative of Metroid or Alien, which I thought was kind of cool. There is some ambiguous qualities to the level design. Sometimes you're stuck in areas where it's just like, how come this wall is not bashing down? Where do I go? I was running back and forth in some of these areas, and it took me forever to figure it out. And sometimes the walls would just explode based on, me jumping down and shaking the earth for a second. I don't know. I don't know. Like, there was a wall, I couldn't get through it. I fell down, made a sort of ground pound sound, and then I went back and the wall was gone, and I walked through. And then sometimes it took me a while to figure out that you can punch some of the faces that are on some of the facades and some of the walls, and those will activate levers. So there's a little bit of an ambiguous nature to the constructs and to the level designs. You can also impede your progress through the levels by picking up some large thing. Looked like I picked up a giant heart, and I threw it in my way, and then the Hulk couldn't get past it, and I was like, I couldn't pick it up again, and I couldn't get some 16-bit style frustrations, if you know what I'm talking about. I did learn a couple of special moves. The ability to clap, the Hulk clap, the super clap was incredibly useful as I took on some of the boss fights in the game. I also was able to grab a character and pile drive them into oblivion, which made me feel a lot more Hulk-like and a lot more powerful. There's some interesting bad guys that you come across in this title, and there's a lot of rinse and repeat encounters with the minions, the regular enemies that you're gonna fight, but it's still fun. It's fun to be the Hulk. I think this is a solid game. If you like the comic series or the animated work, the movies, or you just love comic books and superheroes in general as much as I do, I think you're going to dig this one quite a bit. I'm going to give The Incredible Hulk for the Super Nintendo a 7.5 out of 10. All right, my buddy Josue is here, and we are playing a little. I'm looking at the Hulk right there. I wish we were playing the Hulk. I like really cool. Visiting these 16-bit superheroes.
This is fun too.
We are playing a new game for the Nintendo Switch called Monkey Barrels, and it's made by Good Feel, same developers who brought us my beloved Yoshi's Crafted World. They reached out to me while we were in Japan, and these are a Japanese developer. And they said, we've got a new game that we're publishing. We want some attention on this, and we'd love it if you review it. And they sent me the code, and I was like, of course I would. Anything from Good Feel, I'm in. And so this is called, it's Monkey Barrels. And it's a shooter, twin-stick shooter, where it's a monkey fighting crabs. And you've got to find your way through the maze of the environment and destroy as many of these guys. These little crabs that have taken over TV sets and monitors and stuff. It's a little weird, but lots of power-ups and lots of different weapons, and a fun kind of take on the whole Smash TV vibe. There's some cool boss fights and stuff too. So Josue's gonna, you're playing like level 2, right? You just picked up on my game, I think.
Yeah.
So it's probably a little bit tougher, but you'll be fine. You got the idea. Just try to stay alive. I had a question from Kurt in the audience about Stadia, and wanted to know my thoughts on Stadia. I would love to give you some thoughts on Stadia. I don't have my Stadia package yet. I actually paid money to be a founder, and they're supposed to send me out a bundle. I had one email in the summer, and then that's it. And then I got another one today saying, don't forget you want to have Ethernet plugged into your Chromecast device to get the fastest speed. I don't have the bundle. I don't have any of the stuff. I don't have my username or any of that stuff figured out yet. And it's like, it's out tomorrow. So I don't know. I feel like, and some of the reviews are starting to hit right now. So clearly Google was working with some outlets and stuff to get some buzz and some hype on this. But I feel like they have kind of botched this launch. Even though they've added a whole bunch of new games, they're up to 22 games right now. The fact that it's just this vague kind of deal. I did get a shipping order today. It didn't tell me who it's from, but I have something on the way, so I suspect it's the Founders Bundle. But it's so weird that it's out tomorrow, and I don't have it. It just seems like some balls have been dropped. Question from Taz. How far is Ruby through Luigi's Mansion 3? She's got about 5 of the floors already. She's doing great. Taz was watching me stream a little Jedi Fallen Order the other day, and Ruby was playing on the Switch Lite. She was playing Luigi's Mansion 3. She's loving it, and she's loving the Switch Lite. And she even loves that I got the Switch Lite signed by developers at Platinum. So it's really cool. It's,
that's awesome.
It's a yellow Switch Lite with some signatures on the back. Let's see, what do we got here? Hello to Brian Forbear. It looks like a cartoony, Frober. Looks like a cartoony Smash TV. That's an absolutely perfect analogy right there. Graham Coombe is laughing about something. I don't know. Oh, Hulk has the clap. That's from Blake right there. He does have the clap. The Hulk reminds me of Impossible Mission, not to be confused with Mission Impossible. This game has robots. Rick Savage with some commentary on that Hulk video game, the 16-bit Hulk game. Comment from Jordan Cunningham. My sister just found me a SNES card for Super Mario RPG Legend of the 7 stars for my birthday. It's definitely in my top 5 favorite games of all time. It is really incredible how precious those Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis cartridges are. I went to this, speaking of which, I went to this incredible store, well, a bunch of amazing stores in Akihabara in Tokyo when we were there last week. One of them, and I'm giving them a little bit of a plug here, if you ever make it to Tokyo, you should check out Mandarake, Mandarake. It's 7 floors of toys and hobby stuff and some comics and stuff, but they also have a whole floor dedicated to video games. And they had tons of Super Famicom and Game Boy and old Mega Drive games. And I didn't buy any because, I have a huge collection now of Genesis and Super Nintendo games, but holy crap, is it compelling. Like, you really feel like, if they had Lethal Foes there, and it was a reasonable price, I would have bought the Japanese version of Spider-Man and Lethal Foes for the Super Famicom, because that was never released until after the fact as a translated import, or like a reproduction cartridge. And it's a great Spider-Man game. It's unfortunate that we never got it over here, but it was really, really fun. And they had tons of Hot Toys and tons of Gundam figures and lots of Japanese exclusives. I took it fairly easy. I bought a Wolverine from SH Figure Arts, the Samurai Wolverine, and I put it on my Instagram. I bought the Spider-Man from Figure Arts as well, from the video game, the Insomniac video game with the white spider, and that's sitting right beside my my Spider-Man PS4. So I didn't go too nuts on action figures, but I did load up Ruby with an awesome little Pikachu and a little bear that wears a bear coat, which is so adorable. All right, Alexander Fraser, I've been using xCloud here in Canada too, and it's not supposed to be available to us yet. I need a VPN to log into it, but other than that, the lag is no worse than playing Rock Band somewhere else. Death Stranding, yes, that's the other game that I've got to play. I'm super psyched to check out Google Stadia. I saw Andy Mack from Game Informer had some comments on it. Said that there are some hiccups and some issues, but it actually works quite well. And so, I'll have some thoughts as soon as I get the system in. I know that it's coming, and I'm definitely looking forward to checking it all out. I'm hoping that there's some kind of a reviewer account or something so I can log into a bunch of different software. I'm not going to buy all of these games. I have almost all of them already anyways. But I want to check out a bunch. I think Samurai Showdown, though, is a free, and that's a good one to test. The new 3D Samurai Showdown is a free game with the Founders pack.
Pretty cool.
Right? And that
Online Fighter.
and Destiny, too. So those are two good games to check out the lag with. Super psyched to check all that stuff. Comment from Jordan Cunningham, Mandalorian is amazing. The ending of the first episode brought out the tears. Little green guy is so cute, and he's just becoming cuter, right? Like when he reaches out to to heal his buddy, it's like, oh my God, you're amazing. Question from Adrian Leon, Vic, would you ever want to watch any of the very old Disney movies again on Disney Plus? I'll tell you something. I actually I have been surfing through Disney Plus. I've been playing more games and being able to watch a bunch of stuff on Disney Plus since we got back. But one of the things that I wanted to see is if they had the Davy Crockett show, and I know that there's some weird, dated stuff in there, but the theme was, I watched that show as a kid in syndication. When I grew up, there was no cable TV. I grew up in a time, I remember when the VCR came out, I'm in my late 30s. So I know, but I remember when a lot of this technology was just coming into play. And so I watched whatever was on TV and in syndication, and Davy Crockett was on TV every weekend as a kid. And, as a kid, that music and this kind of Indiana Jones-esque, rough and tumble character registered. He was a hero in the wilderness. And that Davy Crockett, I used to love that. So it was cool to kind of have that immediate nostalgic flashback like that. And I definitely will dig into some of the classic Disney movies. What's ironic is I've been collecting Disney animated movies since the DVD era. I have tons of animated flicks because they used to sell them to people like, we're taking this out of the vault and then it's going back in the vault. You're never going to get it again. Now everything is available. The whole vault that Disney has is like right there, and you can watch anything. And a lot of it is in 4K. And a lot of it looks better than it's ever looked. And it's incredible, I can't wait to, surf through a lot of that stuff with my family. The Rise of the Skywalker film will be the first Star Wars movie that my daughter is going to in the theaters. And she's more interested in other stuff than Star Wars, but I'm slowly trying to coerce her to watch all of the movies. And I know that they're not the despecialized movies on Disney Plus, but I want her to know who all the characters are before we go and see Rise of Skywalker together. And hopefully she likes them all, and then she can watch Mandalorian and all that stuff. Question, how many more EPL streams do we have before the R&R Awards and the Christmas break? Not that many. December 16th is when we're going to start the, right? That's what we worked out, I think, Blake? Rocket and Ray Gun Awards that week. But we're probably going to shoot all of that studio stuff in one day, and I don't know if that's going to be a live show. I'm still figuring that out. So this week we are putting together, well, this is kind of the last big week of the big reviews. So upcoming is, and good question, Taz, upcoming is Death Stranding, which I've started, but then Jedi Fallen Order took all of my attention. I was thinking, like, how am I going to get all of these things in? Am I going to bounce from one game to another and give you guys a bunch of first thought kind of videos? And then Jedi just took over. I was just like, I'm having so much fun. I just want to play this and stream this. And so I put in tons of time on that. I started Death Stranding. I've started Pokemon. I've started Need for Speed. I've started Stormland, which is the last big Insomniac title that they've done for Oculus. It's one of their last ones before they're owned by Sony. So it might be the last one that they're ever going to release that is not a Sony game. I streamed some of that. It's incredible. I'll have some thoughts on that and the Oculus Rift S. I've got Narcos. I've got a few other ones as well. So I've got my kind of last week of trying to get through all of these big titles, get you guys some thoughts on them. Next week, what I'd like to do is a bunch of sort of buyer's guide, kind of end-of-the-year idea kind of videos, sort of isolating a bunch of thoughts around all that stuff, which gets us thinking, all of us collectively, about the best games of 2019 and the best games of this last decade. And so when I'm not playing stuff and streaming stuff this week, I'll be thinking of what the plan is going to be for those buyer's guides and for the Rocket and Ray Gun rundown stuff, like what we're going to do from episode to episode. But if you want to get a jump on things, you can just take a look at our 2018 Rocket and Ray Gun Awards. It's going to be a lot of the same types of categories, and if you guys want to start putting your video pieces together, you can shoot them on your phones. Just make sure you've got some pretty good lighting and you're not surrounded by lots of noise. And you can share them on, how did people get them to us last year? They created YouTube channels. Are we able to take them down off Twitter? Yeah. The easiest thing is to create an unlisted video channel on YouTube and just create little like a 1 minute or something like that on your favorite shooter or your favorite role-playing game of 2019 or whatever, or if you're talking about your favorite game of the last decade. Put that video up as a separate little video on a channel and keep it unlisted. Totally understand if you don't want to do that on YouTube, or you can send them to us as direct videos on Facebook or Google Drive. Okay, yeah. A shareable link on Google Drive. We'll put all of this information in a textual thing when we put the call out there. But if anybody wants to get a jump on that, you sure can. Geek Hero of Comics and Consoles. I still follow EP Daily on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you so much. Hey Vic, the director of Charlie's Angels blames men for why it bombed. Do you agree? Protect. I love Elizabeth Banks. I think she's fantastic. I saw the comment about there's been 37 Spider-Man movies, and why can't there be a female-driven franchise with Charlie's Angels? I totally agree with that. I think that's awesome. But I feel like we're sort of saturated with so much nostalgic sort of material right now. I mean, the Terminator movie bombed as well, and we're starting to see that over and over again. It feels like Hollywood is running a little dry right now, and they need to kind of shock us with their reinventions, like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse did, I think or The Mandalorian has as well. I don't know if people were like clamoring for Charlie's Angels. I think that's the reason why it bombed. I don't think it's because men aren't interested in Charlie's Angels. I think if the word was, this is an amazing movie that you can't miss and look at these performances, everybody would have shown up. But I feel when you look at that on the marquee, it's like, oh, they're trying to cash in on something that people are already familiar with. we can point to that story over and over again. I don't think it has anything to do with, the male-female dynamic in there at all. I still want to see it, though. I haven't seen it. We were traveling, so there was a screening last week, and I was away. I still want to see it. How about sending videos to your Discord direct message, Vic? That's from Audrey on Leon. Yeah, absolutely. I think I can download the videos from there. That'd be great. Not sure anybody was clamoring for a new Terminator flick either. That's from Dave Station VR. Yeah, and I think that was indicative of the box office there, Len. That disappointed a whole bunch of people. Danny Sullivan of Edmonton 12345 says, I'm sick of remakes. I think that is it, right? We underline that. It's like, it feels disingenuous now. It feels like people are, these studios are trying to make money, clearly, and money has been made with these big brands before. But I think if we're going to reinvent, it has to be reinvented in a way where everybody is freaking out about it. Like Rogue One. Rogue One, I think everybody was like, well, I don't know, this is going to be weird. And then it turned out to be this really cool celebration of something, but from a different slant, that I think most people, except for Blake, really, really enjoyed. Okay, I've got, I think, time for one or two more questions here. Will I be? Graham Coombs says, "Will you be reviewing Pokemon Sword or Shield?" I've got Shield, and I've started it, and I definitely will be playing that. I also will be reviewing the Pokemon. I say Pokemon because it's yellow. I'll be reviewing the Switch Lite. We shot it in Japan. Blake's just getting to all of the editing that has to happen with all of that content. But there'll be a review for the Switch Lite and a review for Pokemon Sword, Pokemon Shield very soon. Rick Savage, and I think we are going to end this. Actually, Mondo Blasto Zero says, Charlie's Angels already has a movie remake. Why make another one? Shrug. And then we're going to end this with Rick Savage saying, oh, where was it? I lost it. What? We need a new series? We need new series. Something different.
Pretty much.
Right? Yeah, we want to be... But then, what do we get? We got the, Battle Angel Alita?
That was
amazing. A totally cool
great.
movie.
Yeah.
Not enough people saw that one. And then there was also the Luc Besson movie last year, the...
Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets.
Was that 2 years ago? Good
I love
Lord.
that one.
It's all weird. So much stuff is coming our way. And that was super cool, and nobody went to see that one either. Wasn't that great?
That was fantastic.
That had one of
I
the
loved
strongest sci-fi opening sequences I've ever seen.
The first 10 minutes.
Coming to say hello to each other.
That was
so
cool.
cool. Such a cool thing.
Awesome.
Okay, the Ren gets the last question, then we got to wrap it up. How long do you think it'll take to have Taika Waititi's droid character in another episode? I want Taika Waititi in every episode of everything. The guy's amazing. He's the best. He's such a cool dude, and he's so funny, right?
I saw his name in the credits of Rick and Morty, I think.
Yeah.
Last night.
Yeah, he's having his moment,
awesome.
man.
Yeah.
He sucked in Green Lantern, though, so he's not good at everything. He was terrible in that. He was
perfect.
The whole movie was bad, but he was lame. I was like, he's such a talent, but he was totally wasted in that movie. As much was.
Yep.
All right, you guys, that's going to do it for this episode of EP Live. We will be back on Wednesday with a brand new episode. I'm working on a very cool guest for us, but we'll also be putting a lot of the interviews and reviews and all the stuff together. And stay tuned. There'll be some new content on the channel tomorrow, of course. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for playing. Is this making you smile?
It was really fun. I didn't beat the level at all, but
it's pretty cool,
I'm
right?
loving it.
Yeah, it's hard.
Really cool.
Well, I started you on level 2.
Good job.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure, until we see you again, that you're playing forever.